welcome to the Mississippi Children's Museum. My name is Tracy, and I'm here hosting Farm Bureau Spotlight, which is sponsored by the Farm Bureau of Mississippi. If you do the activity that I'm about to tell you about at home, please feel free to post photos or video and tag us at MCMAtHome, which is the hashtag we're using right now. So, today we are talking about soil. The entire world and all of the ecosystems that are in it depend on soil to survive. Soil is made up of a lot of different minerals, and these include sand, silt, clay, organic matter, which that means things like rotting plants, gases, liquids, and lots of other tiny organisms. Dirt is the name for the mineral part of soil. Soil is home to earthworms, moles, grubs, centipedes, millipedes, snails, slugs, beetles, ants, fungi, so like mushrooms, insect larvae, which means baby insects, bacteria, mushrooms, and many other organisms. If you had a spoonful of soil, it would have more living things in it than all the people in the whole world. Isn't that crazy? So Mississippi has 8 out of 12 types of soil in the world. So that means that the whole world has 12 different types of soil, and Mississippi has 8 of them. That makes us a very unique part of the world. This is a map of Mississippi with the different regions and the different types of soils that we have here. This green part right here along the river is the delta. The soil here is mostly left over from the flooding that happens in that region. Delta soil is mostly used for row crop farming. Right here, this slightly darker brown area is the Lurse region. The Lurse Bluff region. It's formed by wind-blown silt. The Natchez Silt Loam makes up most of this area and is considered our state soil. Did you know that we had a state soil? I didn't know that. The coastal plains, so here we have the upper coastal plain and the lower coastal plain. The coastal plains are used for pasture land and forestry mostly. The blackland prairie, so that's right here and right here. We have 2 different regions of blackland prairie. And the soils there are very dark, and they're very similar to Midwestern prairies. The interior flatwoods, that is right here, this red region you see right here, it's just a strip there. The interior flatwoods is an area with shallow, shale-based soils. The coastal flatwoods, so that's the part right here at the base, this kind of reddish area. It's a thickly forested area, which means that there are lots of trees there, a lot of thick forests. The Gulf Coast marsh is different from the rest of the state. It's this teeny tiny little green part right at the bottom of the state here. It is mostly treeless, so there are not many trees there. And it has marsh vegetation and is uninhabited. That means that a lot of people don't live in that region. So we have an activity that you can do at home, and I'm not going to demonstrate it on the camera because it actually takes over a day to do. So it's an activity that you're going to have to do and then let it sit for a little while and be patient. Because all soil is made up of 3 different types of mineral particles, sand, silt, and clay, you can actually observe these layers in a jar. Sand is the only one of these 3 that can be seen with the naked eye, so that means you don't need a microscope or a magnifying glass to see the sand because the particles are big enough that you can see them with just your eyes alone. Sandy soil is actually not good for plants because if you try and plant things in sandy soil, the water runs right through it and then the plants don't get any water. So what you'll do for this activity is you will collect 1 cup of soil. Don't use potting soil because that doesn't have all the different things that we just talked about in it. Place 1 inch of the soil into a jar. So you can use a mason jar, like what your parents might use for canning. Add water until the jar is 2/3 to 3/4 full. You'll want to be sure that the lid is on very tightly, and you want to be sure that you record the depth of the soil when you start so that when you measure it later, you have something to compare to. Again, make sure the lid of the jar is on very tightly, because the next thing you're going to do is you're going to take the jar and shake it vigorously until all of the different parts of soil, all the little tiny particles, are wet and separated. So all the dirt should be floating in the water at this point. You might have to shake the jar for up to 2 minutes to get everything separated and wet. Then you'll set the jar down and allow the soil to settle. That means that it's going to start coming out of the water and settling back down on the bottom of the jar. After 1 minute, you should be able to take a ruler and measure how much sand has settled. So the sand is going to settle first on the bottom of the jar. Then you have to wait about 3 to 4 hours, so you're going to have to be really patient for this step. And you can measure it again, and the silt will have settled. So you'll have the sand on the bottom of the jar, and then the silt on top of the sand after about 3 to 4 hours. Then you have to wait until the next day. That's kind of a long time, but you could leave it overnight while you go to sleep and then check on it the next morning. And by that point, the rest of the soil should have settled. So you'll have 3 layers of soil. So then you're going to want to remeasure your layers and see how it's changed. So remember how the soil looked when you first put about 1 inch in the jar, and then look at it again and see how your layers have settled out. Again, if you try this activity at home, take some photos for us and tag us at MCM at home so that we can see how your experiment turned out. Thank you guys for tuning in.